I want you to picture you're walking into some corporate situation. Picture walking into the lady at the desk, and she has a candy jar on her desk. It's filled with Kit Kats and Reese's Pieces and M&Ms. If you look at that jar, you're going to use your lifetime of experience to base a judgment off of it. Either, wow, this lady really likes candy and she's pretty thin though. So I wonder, why can she eat candy and why can't I and stay thin? You might look at it and say, oh, that's nice. She's being welcoming by offering candy to people as come in. Or you might not see the candy jar at all. Depends on who you are and what you've been through. Clear vision is crucial when you approach any given thing, meaning how can you look at something now and try to release everything you ever knew to make a decision based on what's really happening and not on all of your drama that we all go through. What do you think of that?
I think that's a great question. Because I think that most, I don't know scientifically like what the percentage is, but most people walk around this earth in their subconscious, not even knowing what they're doing in this life, just working off of programs. And it makes sense because it's easier.
Sure.
It's much easier to operate in millions or billion times faster than, our prefrontal cortex can operate. There's things that happen to us in life. And when those things happen to us in life, if we don't know how to process those, like if we're young and I'm a kid and something happens and then I don't know how to process this really traumatic thing or maybe this emotional thing, I'm going to lock it in. My mind is going to try to formulate a story around it to make it seem right. And in that scenario, like if there's nobody that's an adult or somebody that can help me in a healthy way process that, I'm going to figure out how to process it my own. And it may not be healthy.
It's probably not going to
Most
be
likely
healthy.
not going to be healthy. And so what I can interpret that is kind of like I have glasses right here. When that thing happens, it's kind of like putting on these glasses of a filter. And sometimes it's like sunglasses. Sometimes it might be a really dark filter that I view life in. And typically what happens is when that happens, I'll end up operating my whole life based on those filters, not really seeing things really the way they truly are. And I think that we as humans probably have 50, 60, 70 more filters. I mean, we have so many filters on our life or how we look at life. And I think it really determines how we show up around people, how we show up around life. And going back to your scenario with the candies in the jar, I think there's a couple scenarios there. There's the person walking in, right? That's my scenario, walking in, and I can evaluate like, why do they have candy? And she's skinny and, some of the scenarios you were coming up with. But there's her side too. There's her side and her filters of like what she thinks about me. What must their life be like?
Yeah.
What must their life be like? Because when I encounter people, especially when I encounter people and things don't go right or things don't go as planned, or I'm like, there's something going on over there, I use that phrase and it helps give me empathy immediately.
Yeah, I do something extremely similar. It's not word for word, but I always say, I wonder what that person's going through.
Yeah.
You can just see it written all over some people's faces. I mean, quite literally, you see people laughing, singing in their car. The next car, it could be somebody white knuckling the steering wheel, pissed off, angry at the world. I am constantly amazed at the complexity of the human mind. It's probably one of my favorite things to study, the human brain in particular, actually. It develops as you developed. And you mentioned earlier that a massive chunk of the population just drones on. It's about 95%.
Yeah,
so
I was curious about that.
It's about 95% of any given day is just running off of automation, which, by the way, there's the lizard brain mechanics of that's beneficial. Because imagine if every day you had to relearn how to walk,
right,
or relearn your name. So there is clear functionality and positives to running through the motions and not having to rethink that every day. But when it's almost your entire life, like it's a slippery slope because now you're just a robot, and I find it fascinating. I asked that example because I'm learning more and more how many people assume. Do you have any idea how many people assume per day? I'm start paying attention. Just start paying attention to people. I'm fascinated by the idea of assumptions. They will go into a conversation or go into a meeting, and they've dictated the entire day before it even started, because they've already ran the scenario in their head, but they only ran it one way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of binary. It either worked out or it didn't. Do you find that you notice that people, or do you assume a lot?
I would love to talk about me for a second in that, because I don't know if other people assume. I would imagine yes.
You would assume they assume?
I would assume they would assume.
Perfect.
But I want to tell you, like, it's so crazy that you're bringing this up. I just did this yesterday morning.
Okay, you brought
At
notes.
5:30 a.m., I woke up intentionally to go spend some time figuring out why over the last week and a half I've been having this arguments with my wife
What did you discover?
about my assuming.
Really?
Yeah.
How apt is that?
So here's what I discovered is we all, by the way, all of us have what I call thorns. These, what I was talking about earlier, these emotions that get trapped in, like either feeling like a failure or not good enough or unwanted or unworthy or abandoned or alone. I mean, judged, controlled. There's so many things that we can feel, right?
Oh, yeah.
And when we feel that way, there's things that we want in relationships, like teamwork, partnership, intimacy. Those are things we want, right? But then when these things get triggered, what we do is we go to get what we want by using negative reactions.
Okay. I see where you're going.
And some of those negative reactions, like for me, would be assuming, but those come out in some different ways. Like what I was able to see is some of my reactions
Can you share some?
are righteous indignation. Like I make it a moral issue that I'm right around this.
Okay.
Stubborn, arrogance, defensiveness, escalating the argument,
Ooh.
fact finding, like looking for why I'm right. Independence, I become an innocent victim. Like it's all on me, you know? And I invalidate others. I have a negative beliefs about other people's intentions and what they're wanting and who they are in this relationship.
Well, I mean, the fact that you are so aware that you're dealing with something that you want to improve on, that you're waking up early to jot down notes, I think you're off to a really good start here.
Oh, yes.
That's my opinion.
Yes,
at least.
but here's where my assumption was that Adele is trying to dominate me.
Meanwhile, do you think that that's accurate?
No, I was able to see it actually has nothing to do with her. I was able to see that it has everything to do with me and how I show up in life. Like I have this thing from my past where I felt controlled in my past. And after I would feel controlled, it felt like people were trying to dominate me in relationships. And so when Adele goes to assert something, by the way, I have her permission to talk about anything.
Okay.
As she goes to assert something like that, like it could be anything. I can listen to her from she's dominating, like what she's saying is what we're going to do, and I have no say so. Or I could listen to her from curiosity rather than judgment, because the first way is listen to her from judgment. I can listen to her from your curiosity, and I can ask her questions.
You mentioned something that I think resonates with me often. What most people do is they feel a certain way. They then unknowingly act certain ways to perpetuate that way that they feel, so that their mind says, see, told you.
Oh, yeah.
So people who are lonely will often do things to validate and to absolutely make sure that they remain lonely, even though that is the farthest thing from what they want. But it's same thing with poverty. And then they come into this abundance, they win the lottery or something. It's no surprise that often in a short time they're broke again. It's not that it's a choice. It's that their brain literally doesn't know what to do with this new feeling. And it is so used to living in need and want and stress that it'll do anything to get back to that feeling. So when you're broke again, your brain says, there it is.
Yeah.
There's that feeling.
Yeah.
Isn't that nuts?
It is. It is. It's like, I love studying the brain too, and I love that you do. Cognitive bias or confirmation bias.
Oh yeah.
When I'm looking, I really want that red Mustang, and I see it everywhere when I really want the red Mustang. And the same thing goes with what you're talking about. Like for instance, when I'm not in awareness and I am feeling like a failure, I'm looking for that.
Oh yeah.
And I'm confirming it in the way people around me are. And I like what you're saying, that we can show up into relationships, and it could be considered kind of like creating the people around you. Like how I show up in a relationship is most likely like how that interaction is going to go.
Yeah.
I think it's the Gottman Institute that says that 96% of all conversations end the way they start the first 3 minutes.
That's interesting.
So in the first 3 minutes, which has to do with how I show up to the conversation,
Yep.
in that first bit, like however I choose to show up, the conversation 96% of the time is going to end.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's almost like how you come in framing something is almost a certainty of how it will end.
So if I have a mind frame, me and you are going to have this conversation. We're in a business relationship or something, and I just know that you're shady, or that you're doing something inappropriate with the company, or I just have this mindset that you're against me in some way. And then we come into a conversation to talk about it. I'm going to bring that into the conversation, and it's going to sway you by how I'm being.
That makes sense. You could be talking about tomato soup and it would come up.
It will.
Yeah, that is very accurate.
Yeah. And it has to do with my confirmation bias of assuming you're that way, and I am making it happen
Well, sure.
by how I'm choosing to be.
People are really stubborn, which was on your list.
Yeah.
And it's not really necessarily their fault. It goes back to that clear thinking.
Yeah. I don't
Clear
want to be
vision.
that way.
Right. So let me ask you, let's get into why you are the kind of guy that just woke up at 5:30 in the morning yesterday to jot down notes. Clearly you're aware that you're trying to improve on something. Is it yourself? Is it your relationship? Is it other people? Is it everything all in one? Tell me about that.
The initial side of me, I don't want to do it. I don't want to get up at 5:30. I don't want to work on myself. I don't want to do it's hard work.
Right.
It really is hard work for me to go get real. Like what is really going on? Because it's so much easier to watch YouTube or to veg out doing something else. But I really believe we're whole and complete individuals. And what I did was I went into my relationship with Adele as not whole. As there's something wrong with me, I'm feeling these brokenness in me, and then I'm expecting her to complete a portion of me, like make me feel better in these areas, right? And that's a codependency, which is so normal. That's a normal way of being.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the way we're supposed to be, but it is normal. But what I need to do, and what I'm committed to doing, what you're saying, is I'm committed to being whole and complete so that we can enter this relationship and complement each other rather than trying to complete.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, and it is hard work. And people in relationships, you are not really in a relationship with that other person across from you wearing this meat suit. You're in a relationship with their beliefs, with their ideas, with their opinions, with their attitudes. The physical portion of it is like the least and last part of all of it.
Right.
That's where it comes into play, because if you're coming into a relationship broken and you don't know it, that's even worse. And that's where I was. And I think that's might have been where you were too.
Definitely.
Where, oh yeah, you're thinking I'm good. Everybody else is the problem with everything.
Yes.
And then as you start recognizing it, you fall into this trap of, okay, I need saving. It's up to you to now do it.
Yeah.
Isn't
I
that
think that's wisdom. I think wisdom is knowing how much I don't know. Because the more I've tried to go through this process, the last 7 years of learning more about me, the last 7 years of letting go, I've learned, man, there's so much I don't know.
Yeah.
But before then, I thought I knew so much, and my arrogance what had me doing what you were just describing. But the more I know I don't know, man, it opens me up to more curiosity of like, what do I not know?
Yeah.
You know?
I've been in this world now for about 12 years. So let's say I got 4 or 5 years up on you.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better, my friend. I learn every day. I don't know shit. I mean, like, and I'm good with that. And
Exactly.
and it's not that we don't know anything. It's that there is so much more to discover the more you discover.
I was doing some research the other day on the biggest star. It's huge and it's really far away.
Yeah.
And when you go to looking at that, I mean, my mind can't compute some of the things that's involved in that.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, I'm right here on this little bitty area, and there's this massiveness around me, and I think that I'm big.
I know.
Like, I think that
Yeah.
it makes no sense to me. And so when there's a bigger picture involved, it does create a whole lot more humility of knowing what I don't know. Can I share something about that with you?
Please.
Because this really like is a lot of the ways that Adele and I teach. Imagine there is this circle of all the things there is to know in the entire world. And then there's this little bitty pie, and that is the things you know that you know. And then there's this little bitty pie, and those are the things you know that you don't know. Like, I don't know how to fly a plane, but I know that. And then there's an entire world of things that we don't know that we don't know. We have no idea.
For sure.
And if you knew, you would live and operate differently in this world. And that's what we address, is we call those blind spots. Yes, Romans 7, the Apostle Paul talks about, I know what to do, and yet I keep doing this other thing. And what's wrong with me? I know what to do, and I keep doing the wrong thing. What's my wretched soul? What's wrong with me? And I really relate to that. I relate to that because I was doing those things. I have no idea what I'm doing. But let's bring in the blind spot into it. Had I known that back when I was first introduced to explicit magazines as a little kid, and my innocence was stolen from me, and I felt like my value and my worth was taken away, and then all through my life, I was trying to get this accolades, accomplishments, like, am I enough? Am I good enough? From all the opposite sex to me. Like, if I would have known all of that created this destructiveness in me to have me just ruin relationships for years, I would have been able to go back and fix that. I would have been able to look at that from a more clear point of view and look at that 8-year-old and be like, man, I'm so sorry that happened, and address that and change that mindset. Whereas, man, I just recently have done that. But that's a blind spot. It's a blind spot of being able to know that things have happened in my past. And if I can go back and what we call is close the file cabinet drawer on my past so I can be fully present and have a future full of possibility. But if I can go back and do that, man, that's amazing. And that's just an example of just one blind spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's come up a few times in this show where it really freaks me out how important the first 7 to 9 years of any human life is, how formative. It's really it's not fair because it's you're in this you're in this state where you're not in control and it's everybody around you. It's so delicate. And then these things happen to you. You see this explicit material, which likewise, freakishly similar. I know a lot of our stories align. Identical thing with me at the identical age, which is just interesting. And then
I'm sorry.
Thanks. And then, and likewise, going back to that candy jar now, like you and I, not only will we see things through a different filter than the 8-year-olds that grew up in a clean house with air conditioning and safe and, without seeing all this crazy visuals and other things that happen to you to make you feel like you're not worth anything. even within us, we're still going to, we're going to see things differently.
Yeah.
So I think that having somebody to help unveil that and help kind of get you out of that shell is obviously it's crucial. But what do you do for people that still don't know and they're just in this echo chamber of misery and they still repeat the same actions? I liken it to, you ever have a mosquito bite on your leg and then you wake up 3 a.m. and your sheets are bloody because you just were mauling your leg, scratching your leg.
Yeah.
It's running in the background. That was not your choice. I think it's the same thing. Really bad, alcoholics and drug addicts. It's not that they chose to go get high again. It's that that's not really them.
I think there's a vast difference between want and like.
Yeah.
Like I could want something and like something and to be completely different. And that's where I think addiction has a lot of, we use that in addiction. Because I like doing whatever it is. I mean, I think sin is fun, actually. I think there's a reason that sin is fun.
It's so tempting.
Yeah. And I like that sometimes, but I don't want it because I have a bigger picture of an outcome and the results and the wisdom around the consequences to my actions. I don't want it, but it doesn't mean I don't like. We do experience a good bit of our clients who come in, they really want a new life. They really want connection, intimacy, teamwork. They really want that in their marriage and in their life. And then they come with open, willing hearts to do that. And, I think that us humans are a lot like water. We will flow with the path of least resistance. Like if you were to think of water, if it were to rain right now, all your water is going to run down this hill and down toward the creek, and unless something gets in its way. And I feel like that is the main thing that we do to help people is create awareness, because we are a lot like water. And if nothing is in the way, we will go back to doing the things we shouldn't be doing, the path of least resistance, unless there's some type of awareness that, I don't want to do that. I actually want to do something good for myself, like eat good, healthy food instead of bad food. I want to exercise. I want to stay in church. Or actually, these are things I want rather than these other things. And I think that awareness is one of the things that Dale and I help bring to people's mind, because they're still going to, the people we coach still do things that are not their best self. I still do things that's not my best self, even though I do this work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm still doing things that's just not my best self, and I'm unfortunately doing things that breaks Adele's trust. Now, that's not my goal, and I never want to do that, and it's my goal never to do that. And I'm human, so it may still happen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, I mean, for the people that come to you, you talked about the difference between like and want. Do you make it clear to them they might not like a lot of what they have to do to get what they want?
Yeah, I do. We have good calls. In fact, our first call that we have people do, it's just an assessment call, and it's 45 minutes. In less than 45 minutes, I guarantee them they're going to know their next steps, what to do effectively after this. They're going to know the why behind why they did what they did that they didn't want to do. They'll know immediately. In 45 minutes, they'll know all that. And they'll have very clear steps about what to do going forward from that assessment call.
Is this call, are they together, or do you take it individually and then assess?
I would like for them to be together. We request for them to be together, and about 70% is together.
That's got to get pretty hairy sometimes.
30% is typically just the wife.
Interesting. Never just the guy. Most individual counseling, I think it's to the tune of 80% are women. Wow. Only about 20% are just men.
I didn't know that.
Men just, they just don't seek help.
It makes sense to me. I didn't want to seek help. I was I don't say that my parents raised me thinking this, but in my mind, I was thinking that if I went to go seek therapy or help, it was something wrong with me.
Isn't that crazy? Well, I
And
mean,
I didn't go get help. I was in, you know my story too. I was in PTSD, depression, anxiety for years, battling it on my own with alcohol, prescription drugs, refused to get help.
at what level would you say, and this that might not be the fair way of asking it, but I think you're going to know what I'm getting at. Do you see the people who lose control and are crawling around to do whatever they can to find one last little, gram or
Yeah.
a little crack rock,
Yeah.
all the way down to people, drinking mouthwash to be alcoholic. And then the people who just drink too much.
Yeah.
They know it. They also are in control, but
Yeah.
they just don't want to take that step to stop. Where were you on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to say it, because obviously being a police officer, I've seen that spectrum,
Yeah.
right? And one of the most shameful things I ever experienced was whenever I really realized I was in addiction and needed to go get help, because I arrested those people.
Was it? It was shameful to you?
It was very shameful. I did not get there. My addiction was just drinking extremely heavily after work every day. I was injured in 2010 and started taking prescription narcotics, and I needed more and more and more. And over a 6-year time frame, from 2010 to 2016, when I went into rehab, I just gradually increased. Before I went into rehab, I was on 14 different prescription medications,
Wow.
heavy amounts.
How old were you?
38 when I went into rehab.
Yeah, man. If you didn't make that move then, you may never have.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, usually it's by
No
the
doubt.
time you're 35 to 39.
Yeah.
That's it. That's who you're going to be.
Oh, I was
unless-
determined. I was a victim, and I knew I was dying.
Same here.
I knew I was going to die,
Yep.
and I had already, I had already like thought it through.
Oh yeah.
In fact, one of our episodes that we just recently was doing, I was talking about these suicidal thoughts I was experiencing, and even attempts that I was experiencing. It's just the mind during really tough times. The mind can play so many
Oh yeah.
tricks on me, and thank God that's not who I am. That and thank God that I think it's an evil spirit of suicide, and it's gone away from me. But I'm so thankful. I was not thinking clearly.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and that really brings me a lot of joy that you came out the other side of
Me
it.
too.
Because many people don't. Getting into the relationships and talking about breakthroughs. Do you get to witness couples having a real aha breakthrough moment? Has that happened in what you're doing?
Brother, man, this brings me so much joy to talk about.
Yeah.
Adele and I call ourselves miracle watchers. We get to sit on the other side of a couple who, if you were to imagine marriages on a scale from 1 to 10, the marriages we work with are mainly 1 through 4. They're in crisis. They need CPR. Like, they need help right now. And we're able to see them sit on the other side of us and watch it transform. It's kind of like a butterfly. Yeah. It's amazing.
Total transformation.
It's amazing to sit in front of somebody using the material we use, which is, to me, it's interesting in itself, because I don't feel like we teach anything. I don't think there's anything that we teach, because there's, in my opinion, I don't think there's anything that people need to do to learn. There's things that we need to do as humans of letting go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the questions on this sheet right here is, tell me about how important it is to let go.
I love this because, we're all human. We're all in relationships, and, we may or may not be in marriages, but we're all in relationships, and we're all meant to have relationships, all kinds. Mm-hmm. And if communication can't be had in a relationship, man, it's just difficult to have a relationship. And so it's amazing sitting on the other side of a couple and they're able to let go of the junk that keeps them stuck, and they're able to have a clear vision of the people on the other side of them. Like there's this statistic, and I'm probably going to botch up a little bit of this, but when I was in school learning this, this was one of the statistics that Dr. James Dobson did. 97% of all couples assume the other spouse is against them.
In
relationships, 97% of all couples think the other spouse has something against them, like maybe they're against me in some way, or they're not on my team during this particular season, or they seem to be against me in this conflict.
Wow.
Reality, because this is statistically proven, is 0.07%. Reality is 0.07% is actually against the other spouse.
Yeah, I mean, literal
Like actually,
polar opposite.
Exactly. Whereas that means that 99.3% of all spouses are actually for the other spouse. They just don't know how to communicate that they're for. They don't have the right words. They have this junk that I was talking about, these different reactions of still trying to accomplish what they want to accomplish, intimacy, partnership, teamwork, but they're doing it in ways like defensiveness, sarcasm, negative body language, passive aggressive behavior that sure doesn't seem like you're on my team.
Right. We've all seen it happen
Right.
too, where you're like, you can see a couple in crisis from across the restaurant. And I mean, you're probably more attuned to it than most, but even the untrained eye, you can feel and sense the energy, the visuals, the body language, all of it.
If I were to give if I only had a few minutes to give you here is the best advice I could possibly give you into having a good relationship, that would be emotional safety. We have this equation that if you want emotional intimacy in your relationship, there's an equation you can use. It's emotional safety plus transparency equals emotional intimacy. So those two things are needed. First is emotional safety, and that is just being able to create a safe place on the other side of you.
Without feeling judged, without feeling like you're being monitored.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of us don't really know what it's like on the other side of you.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't create a safe place for relationships. I was judgmental. I didn't come from curiosity. When Adele would bring something up, I would try to shut her down, make her wrong. I didn't really fully hear what she had to say, and then I tried to fix whatever it is that was going on with her. Those things are not safe.
Right.
None of those are safe. So I would say there's ways to do that, and one is set and setting. That is making sure you're doing it at the right time, the right place. That's important. Not whenever they're going off to work and not right before going to bed. And then you want to have a speaker and a listener. If you have a speaker and a listener, you'll have a good conversation, but typically it's a speaker in waiting.
Right.
Somebody's just waiting to speak.
They're not even hearing you because they're ready to roll with what's on their mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And listening is not a gift. It's a skill.
It can be polished and sharpened and honed in.
It's a skill that requires learning and practice. It really does. It's something like people think they hear. People think they listen. And in reality, they do not.
Man, it's easy to say, yeah, I heard you. And you did, but what did you get out of that? What happened in that conversation that you left with that's going to serve the other person? Is probably nothing. You only left with what's going to serve you.
Yeah, so we have ways that we teach this. We have ways that we teach how to listen. We have ways that we teach emotional safety. And if I were to give you one thing that I know I can give you in 5 minutes that would make the most difference in a relationship, it doesn't have to be a marriage. It would be creating emotional safety on the other side of you, like how you show up in a relationship or how you show up. And I love this for husbands, and I hope husbands can hear me here, because I'm about to take a lot of work off of you. You don't have to fix anything.
What do you mean?
You can just listen.
Gotcha.
I'm telling you, it's amazing. As men and I'm sure women may do this too, but as men, I want to fix your problems. I am wired and equipped to be able to fix whatever it is you have going on.
So good.
And that's amazing for a husband to just be like, tell me what's going on, and then hear the wife, and that's it, not fix. And so that would be huge.
Almost every woman, especially in a relationship, really just needs to be heard, and they need somebody to chat with. For the guy, they're thinking, how is this how is this helping? How am I helping you?
Yeah.
This is stupid. You're just going on and you're not letting me offer. So they're going to say, well, this thing happened and this lady at work is, and you're like, well, maybe you should try X. And they're like, can't you just listen? Can't you just be, I'm trying to tell you this. And you're like, well, I am listening. I'm listening so much that I just gave you an answer. How would I give you an answer if I wasn't listening? And then they're like, you don't get it. And then it turns into this whole thing where meanwhile, just shh, just listen. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And there's here is a good question. How would they know that you're listening?
I mean, I don't know.
I think it's the other person across from you that would be the judge.
Which makes sense because I don't have a good answer. When you asked me that, I was like, I don't know.
Well, here's like if you're talking to me,
Yeah.
and you want me to hear you, who would be the judge on whether or not I heard you?
Yeah, me.
You. And so the best way for that to happen is for me to be able to hear you. And then if you're going to be the judge of that, that means it's on me. And so the best way I could do that is listen to what you're actually trying to say. So, it would be rephrasing what you said. It would be repeating the last 3 words that you said. It would be what we would call listening to your heart, like not repeating your words, but the spirit behind what you are saying.
Interesting. So what you're saying is you're having a conversation. Your wife wants to kind of get something off her chest. And let's say the conversation goes on for 30 minutes. What you're saying is don't analyze this like you're trying to fix a carburetor.
Yeah.
Just be there. And then occasionally nod, shake your head, yes.
I didn't know that you went through that. Or, man, tell me more.
Do you feel like there's a way to make that genuine so it's not like, well, this coach just told me to do this? And
good question. It would be manipulative if, let me go back a little bit. I've been through so many leadership trainings and sales trainings and development trainings. And I've been through so many of those to learn ways to manipulate other people.
Mm-hmm.
And people know it. If I was here on the other side of you trying to use my tactics and skills to manipulate this conversation, you would know it.
Do you think most people would know it?
I think so.
Their BS meter goes.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's built into us. However, I also think that you would also be able to tell my humility.
Yeah.
And so it's a heart posture. It's like it really like gauges the heart of who that person really is and how they're approaching you around things. And I think you can really tell if people are wanting to serve themselves only. We're looking to give you lasting freedom from these things that keep us stuck and small and ineffective in life. And we're doing those in ways that, with our program of being able to let go of the things that we have kept for so long in life.
So instead of trying to treat or talk therapy the death out of the symptoms, you want to fix the issue so that there are no symptoms to be fixed.
That's right. And obviously tricks and tips are great.
Sure.
Like for emotional safety, we have those things about speaker, listener, make it short and concise, only address one topic at a time, have a set and setting is proper. That's how you can create emotional safety, is having some guidelines to be able to go by. And we have those and they're helpful, but we're not set into tools.
What would you actually call what it is that you do if it's not therapy and it's not coaching? If you could just explain to a 8-year-old, which means that you then have to know it to its finest, nuance, how would you quickly explain exactly what it is?
Looking at Romans 8, it says to live a spirit-filled life. And it talks about we are us being three parts: spirit, soul, and body. Spirit being meaning that God made me individual, and I have a spirit that he gave me, and that when I choose to accept Jesus, he will give me the Holy Spirit that will help me. That's a guide and helper. But then I have a soul, and that's my mind, my will, and my emotions. And then I have a body. Those are the three parts that it talks about in Romans. The spirit is transformed immediately. That is, I ask Jesus into my heart, I can be transformed immediately. The other two is what Paul talks about as sanctification. Like there's a process. And
Right.
that's what Adele and I do. Adele and I help people understand and work through that process of sanctification, because it really is a process. You can't just automatically, if your subconscious has been programmed to do this same thing over and over and over again, you can't just say, all right, I'm not going to do that. We can choose to address all these different issues in life and then spend 93 days trying to develop new habits and trying to figure all that out. We can do all that, and that would be a difficult process, and it would take a long time to figure out all these different things. Or we can do the way that we have designed in our program, and that is we use a file cabinet example. You have the past filing cabinet, a present filing cabinet, and a future filing cabinet. We go through life, and if we don't close that past filing cabinet of the things that happened in our life, it stays open, and it will affect our present. Like I can't be fully present with putting my daughter in bed at night. I'm thinking and ruminating about other things. My future is always going to be predictable. I will always have a predictable future that's based on my past. And like I will keep living the same year over and over and over and over and over until the day I die or until the day I get awareness.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we help people go and close that file cabinet door, that drawer, by saying, yeah, that did happen to you. And it was horrible, but it's not still happening now. And we can close that. We can get a good picture around it. What we call is we separate the lies from the truth. Because, when things happen to us, there's what really happened, and there's what we made it mean, which is a lie, typically.
And it's a lot.
And it collapses like it's true, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a way of teaching what's called 20/80 rule. We teach how to uncollapse it where you can see it really clear, what's true and what's not. And you can choose to let go of what we call the lies from the enemy. And once that's gone, we have truth. Truth is a firm foundation, which is about, I think, 5 questions ago, you were asking me about a very specific thing, like how do we do this? And it is a firm foundation that it's required. Because we can't do anything unless there's a firm foundation. Otherwise, it's all shaky ground, and I don't know who I am. I don't know what my identity and purpose is in life, and I'm just going to flow everywhere if I don't really know that. So going back to the three ways, there's spirit, soul, and body. And once I'm able to, my spirit is transformed immediately. The other two, the soul and the body, they're to be sanctified, which means it takes a process. We help with that process to make it shortened in a very short period of time in a program that we call the Whole and Complete course. And it is designed in a very effective way, and it's all online, very effective way to take you from wherever you are now in 7 short weeks or so by doing just one video a week and the material that's in it. By the end of that, you'll have a very clear picture of who you are in this life, and you'll be able to let go of the things that you have identified that keep you stuck in life.
The present moment is the only time that you will ever know that you can actually do anything. Can't control the past, can't predict the future. You literally, so people say, well, there's no better time than the present. In reality, it is only.
There is no other time.
Right.
There's so right now.
If I wanted to crumple this paper, I didn't do it 5 minutes ago, and I can't predict when and if I'm going to do it. So if I want to do it, I got to do it now, or I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So just do it.
Isn't it something?
Yeah.
There's only now.
Right. Right. And it's so easy to go on vacation. The first day you put your feet in the sand, you're saying to your wife, we should do this again next year.
Mm,
You didn't even start and
yeah.
you're doing it again. You're thinking
Yeah.
about next year. Just feel the grains of sand on your toes now.
Yeah. That's difficult.
It's really difficult. Why?
What you're talking about is just not being fully present with like what is going on right now. And we deal with a lot of betrayal, and that has a lot of triggers involved in it. Triggers meaning something happens and they get triggered and they have this deep emotion where if it were something like infidelity, what happens to the spouse who experiences the trigger is they go back to the time when it happened, and it's as if it is happening all over again. It's like it's fresh, even though it's not, even though it's not real.
Mm.
It's like their spouse, even though their spouse may be right there in front of them, and even though their spouse may be completely like with them, supportive, loving, caring, not actively out doing anything wrong, it's as if they are right now.
Sure.
And we help with grounding, being able to do grounding techniques, things like, doing something like this.
Interesting.
I teach the wiggling of toes because like you can't see my toes right now, but I'm wiggling them.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think about your toes until I said think about your toes. Then
Yeah.
you're going to think about your toes.
Which is great because now that I'm thinking about my toes, I'm not thinking about this past issue, that has me all messed up.
So you really help people divert, bring it back. That happened a while ago. I understand that smell of a particular perfume or the song that was on the radio when you found out that you were, say, cheated on or whatever. That's a traumatizing moment again. And then what you do is you help people understand that that is not happening again.
Yeah.
Oh,
all
that's
good
cool.
coaches, therapists, counselors, the first thing that they would do if they are really being a helper is to establish some ground rules. And one of those is being able to give them a safe place and some techniques to come out of what it is we're going to be working in. And that's what we do. Very first thing is we teach them breathing techniques. We do a lot with having them know grounding things. And then we tell them, listen, as we're going through this, I'm going to be actively telling you, all right, breathe. Everything's okay. You're in a safe place. You can tell me more, or you can slow down. That's any therapist or any counselor or coach is going to do that first.
What is your drive to take on this monumental task? Because it's got to be exhausting. I look at it like, I'm a pretty busy guy. I have a full-time job, and it involves my mind being creative. It involves running a significant sized team with all sorts of things, right? And sales and marketing and all of that. But at the same time, I still find time for the things that I want to do. And let's talk about this show, for example.
Yeah.
And I do it and I love it, but it's real work. It takes time, right? Even if you try to justify it, it's only a couple hours a week, still time. For you, who you're overcoming still, I think it's like an addict where you're never really, really fully out of recovery. You're always in recovery. For people like you, me, who have had, PTSD and other things that are serious effects, how do you find the strength and the time to support other people?
Great question. Two things that come to my mind. One is I feel like I'm called to this. I don't want to do this. I get joy and I get fulfillment now, but I don't want to tell the entire world my past, my issues, the arguments I have in private in my home. I don't want to share those things. Yet I feel compelled and called to do it as a ministry. And I don't recommend people do that.
Right.
I don't I think therapy, I think that speaking is important. I think that getting your past out is important. I don't recommend people just share openly in a platform like I do about all the junk. But I feel different about me. I feel called to do this, and I
Mhm.
feel like what we do is a ministry to others. And I'm grateful that I'm doing it, yet it's not something that I was really eager and gung ho about doing to begin with. But I am grateful that am here doing it. I feel like it is a ministry to do. We don't really, I don't know where the time comes from
Right.
because I feel so full right now. I feel limited in my schedule. You know, we do homeschooling, we have marriage ministry, we do marriage intensives, we have an online marriage academy, which we're consistently working on and building up. We have group coaching calls, we have individual coaching calls. And then we have a marriage and family, and I'm in a season in my life where I am actively taking care of my parents and stuff, and there's a lot that's involved in that. And so my capacity and my ability, I think, comes straight from the Lord. I get everything that I have. I think it's Galatians verses 5:22 and 23. It talks about the fruit. There's 9 different things: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. I did not have those on my own.
Mm.
And I do have them, different degrees of them,
Right.
but I have them now. And that is what helps me.
Well, you're obviously well versed, no pun intended, in the Bible, and you've referenced it a few times. And I find it impressive when anybody is um, really, really good at one thing. There's satisfaction in watching people who excel at a thing. I think it's impressive, and it says a lot about the effort and bandwidth you've put into it to understand the Bible so
Mm.
well. So I
Thank
commend
you.
you on that. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Um, but why? What turned you onto the Bible so much to where
Mm.
you don't have to think about making it part of your life anymore? I think it's just a part of your life, right?
It is,
Do you
yeah.
know when that happened? Was there like
I do.
a moment? Oh,
It's
please.
April of 2018.
Amazing.
Yeah, I
What
know
happened?
exactly when it happened.
What tell me about April?
Around 2017, after I got out of rehab, I had a lot of medical conditions. I thought I had a lot of conditions before, but after you come off of drugs and alcohol,
And
your
you're
body goes through some intense stuff. And mine did. And I got to where like my hands didn't work anymore. My spine ended up moving itself to where I don't know what it was called, but it would make my hands have what's called trigger finger every
oh,
morning
sure, I'm aware of that.
for
Yeah.
hours,
Yeah.
where they wouldn't operate, and then when they would, they would pop, and I
Mhm.
couldn't get them back, and they would pop in, and then my knees would collapse on me randomly when I would walk around for
Yeah.
months. It would just collapse, and a neurologist could not figure it out. I mean, they did later. It took about 8 months, but during that time, that's when I was really searching. I was like, I want something different for my life now that I'm done with drugs and alcohol. I'm done with this promiscuous life of living. I'm done with all that. April 2018, I was on a men's hike with our church, and I was just able to see. This is what I was able to see, that in the most versed Bible that I think anybody would ever know is John 3:16. God so loved the world that He sent His only Son to die for us, and I think everybody knows that verse. However, I really got it for something new for me. When I was out there, I knew that Jesus would have come. God would have sent His Son Jesus to come and die for me if I was the only one on this whole earth and nobody else was here. That's how much He loves me, and that's how much He loves you and everybody listening. That if God had a refrigerator, your picture would be on it. If he had a wallet, your picture would be in it. That's how much he loves you and I. And I didn't really get it. I didn't get it until I did get it.
I'm imagining it was not because you were sitting on a mountaintop with a shaman doing, mushrooms.
Yeah.
It was just an enlightenment that came upon you. It was the proper time and place. Your mind was open. The people you were with were engaging and understood, or were you just literally on your own and it was like you were staring off and it just happened and you couldn't unsee it?
It's very clear in the Bible that if you seek him, you will find him. If you look for him, you will find him. I think that God is a very honorable God who will not disrespect your free will.
I think that nature in general has an mysterious ability to be a powerful catalyst for a lot of people. There are more and more stories of people making life-changing and life-altering moments when they're out in nature. I mean, your story, I have one. Almost everybody that sits across from me at this table, I mean, they literally can hone it down to a moment, which I used to find fascinating. I think I was expecting to hear a lot more people say, I don't know, it wasn't really any one thing. So many people can say, oh, I can tell you exactly what it was. And you know that I think every single one was outside.
It fascinates me. It takes me to another subject that's not even close to what I'm talking about now, but
Perfect.
frequency.
Yeah.
In nature, I think everything has a frequency. I think everything operates off of frequency.
Sure.
In vibration. In John 1, it talks about the beginning of this world. And it talks about in the beginning was the Word. And then in Genesis 1, it talks about how God made this earth. He spoke it. He spoke it through frequency, vibration. He spoke the world into existence. And I just believe that everything is made up of that. And I think in nature is more of the perfected nature of that frequency versus the city. Wi-Fi and radio frequencies and all the junk that we have, when we're in nature, that's stripped away.
Yeah, it's the lack of stimuli.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no wonder that being outside of, like you said, sirens, city, millions of people, cell phones, cars, all the distractions that are surrounding us every day. Nature has a little bit of everything. It has perfect or close to perfect fractals in the veins and leaves, and then it has complete disarray of sand that gets washed and thrown all over the place. But it is all like this dance, because when you go back the next day, it'll do it again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I think that your story about being outside at that moment is just another one that I can chalk up to. There's something to getting out in nature. There really is. There was and you probably know about this. There's a type of therapy that exists where, and it was discovered really by accident. Therapist would have her sessions, and then there was construction going on in her building, and she found that the racket was just going to be too much. So she, rather than canceling her patients, because she knew how much her clients and patients relied on her, she said, you know what, we're just going to do walking therapies. So they go out and they do therapy as they're just walking around the campus.
Yeah.
And every single person for 3 weeks reported back to her that was just about the best therapy session they ever had. And it quickly dawned on her, we were outside. That was one factor. The other factor was they were moving forward. They were walking.
Yes.
And then the third factor was because they were walking outside in an uncontrolled environment, unlike a treadmill, their eyes were doing a gaze left, right.
Yes.
So because their eyes are moving left and right, taking in the environment around them, they're literally moving forward, and they were talking about something. They literally were putting it in their past, and then their brain was witnessing it happen. That's awesome. So I find that frequency, being open and ready, and all of that is important, but it just shows how little bit control we really do have
Yeah.
until you realize you have some control. Then you feel like a superhero who's unstoppable and that you can do anything, and that every day feels like you're just getting started. Or at least for me, that's what happened. And I remember saying to my wife repeatedly, man, I just feel like something's missing. And then it wasn't until way too late that I realized I only said that right at the moments when everything was like really good. And then it was just my brain's way of being like, I should have just said, I want to feel like this all the time. Because right now, nothing is missing.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And then, but instead I put it as, man, something's missing. Did you ever feel like something was just missing and something was wrong?
Brother, I've spent my whole life feeling like there's a missing puzzle piece in my life until a few years ago, until 2018. I felt like there's missing puzzle pieces and I can't figure this life out. I can't figure out what I'm here for. I don't know what my purpose, identity is. My purpose was wrapped up, my identity was wrapped up completely in what I did.
Right.
And when I didn't anymore, who am I?
Right. You're left with this shell of a human
That sucks.
It does. For me, I had a specific moment as well. And it was the beginning of pushing the 1 degree change, just 1 degree change. But if you move a ship that's traveling across the world 1 degree, they're going to wind up in a different continent eventually. So it's not like you have to just make this unbelievable, life-changing decisions like that. You really don't. It's start small. Recognize what you recognize. Don't discount it, and then just build on that. Like you mentioned before, a good foundation. That's what happened for me. And
I love that.
It was amazing.
Because what you're talking about is not taking on the whole thing. Man, you could get burnt out. Like, I want to fix some part of me, and there's this, I read this book, and there's this 10 steps to freedom, and I can do all these things, and I'll be burnt out tomorrow.
That's right.
But if I just take one of the ideas and be like, you know what? I could do that. That's that 1% shift.
Yeah.
What a great mindset.
It has served me well, because then what happens is when you have your little setbacks and you kind of revert back, you have your little moments, it's not so bad, because now you're like 30 degrees off to the other direction. So if you have a little blip, it's nowhere near what it used to be.
Oh, I like that concept.
Yeah, because
you can reverse that concept in the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
The way you're talking about it, you can be like, well, that's not serving. I'll go to this other.
You better believe it.
Yeah, that's great.
There is something about going that other direction that happens exponentially, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you could destroy your life and everybody around you in a matter of weeks or months.
Yes.
And if it was that easy to go the other direction, but it's not. It's messy. It's hard. It kind of sucks. And if you can just be aware of it, I think that's huge. My goal is for just one other person to get something out of this. This is probably the most selfish endeavor I've ever taken on. This is for me.
This podcast.
Yeah. And I know that's a kind of it's just a bold statement, but this is for me. And what I get out of this is it's learning. That's it. I'm obsessed with not wasting time. I cringe at watching movies that I don't like. I don't care about who's married to who. I mean, it's like painful to me. I have like an adverse reaction to it.
Where do you think that comes from? The obsession of that?
Oh, it's me trying to capitalize on every moment alive, because I realize that I would say wasted 35 years of my life. I mean, not that I fully did. I personally did. It was wasted for me by others. And I feel to this date that that's not cool and not fair. Yeah. So I'm getting that back now.
Okay.
I'm aware that that's a little ridiculous, but I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you find the You mind if I ask you a question?
No, please.
Where do you find the motivation? Because you said you're feeling like this is a selfish endeavor, and I feel like this is a value.
The show is in a studio that I invested just my own money, that my wife did not give me one iota of a hard time about. She encouraged me to do it.
You have an amazing wife, by the way.
Yes, I do. There's probably, in my mind, I've set the idea that there is no ROI. This is all sunken costs. I will never recoup any of this.
Okay.
But in a positive narcissistic way. Let me explain why. I think that that term is overused a lot.
Agree. Oh, I totally agree with that.
But keep in mind, narcissism, much like going 1 degree left or right, positive, dark, is also the same way, where I know people who are so miserable that they are doing all of the things to convince themselves that they are unfixable. To me, that is as narcissistic as it gets. You think you are that rare and that unique that you are unfixable. That's a problem. So I never wanted to go that route.
Yeah.
I went the other route of, I've recognized that I'm able to make changes in my own life. What else can I do to continue that improvement? And if it means building a studio and bringing people like you and other amazing people in to bounce ideas off of, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
I love it.
So it's kind of selfish because it is self-serving. I do hope other people get so much enjoyment, or somebody maybe is in a bad position and they hear the show and they get inspired or enlightened. Wonderful. Honestly, that would be wonderful. But when we are done with this show, I'm going to feel satiated. I'm going to feel happy. And I know that because I can feel it now happening. I genuinely can feel it. It's,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, and I'm at peace with it.
Well, I think that your selfishness in this is a way to say it. And I think there's so much value on the other side of the camera that I like your mindset, because in that mindset, you're offering a lot of value, but in the same time, you're keeping yourself filled up, because these things can be very depleting.
Oh yeah.
If you didn't love doing this,
That's right.
Yeah.
In the future, just declaring that I'm going to have you back on the show because you and I share a unbelievable past. We both were police officers. It both did not go well for either of us.
Yes, right.
We both had pretty severe traumas as a youth, probably the same ages. There is a lot that we can unpack. One of the things that I want to focus on in a future episode is going to be the issues with law enforcement. How did you and I get a badge and a gun? How were we put in a position and able to get past the antiquated psych tests that didn't identify? I'll tell you right now, it would have been nice to know this when I was 20, when I was taking the police test.
Yeah.
It really, I feel like I was let down. I would much rather have been told, hey, Steve, this job is not for you. Instead, they said, you're hired, son. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a real problem. And then we wonder why that you hear all the things that happen. Anyway.
I look forward to a future episode.
Yeah, we're going to have to dig into that. I want to start winding this down. Sure. And there's two ways that we can do that. Number one is to give you an opportunity to go on your own if you have anything that you want to add or any questions. And then if so, now's the time. If not, I'm going to go to my book and then I flip through and I let the pages dictate the closing question.
Oh, let's do that.
So,
I would love to hear what you have in there.
Pressure's on.
This is exciting for me.
So the idea of this book was to just jot down a bunch of thoughts that come to me from time to time. And then, I feel like I left myself a little bit. I'm looking right at you. I'm not paying attention to this book. So what I read is what I would like you to dig into, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So, has there ever been a moment in your life that was so vivid, but that moment never actually happened at all.
Oh, this is crazy. Wow. Has there ever been a moment
Yep.
in my life where it has been so vivid, but it never really happened at all?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I never knew it until about 2 days ago.
Come on.
Yeah.
Tell me right now. I have goosebumps.
So I'm sitting at the table with my daughter and I'm telling her this story about or let me back up. She was telling me a story about spiders and black widows. And I was telling her where black widows are. They're normally outside around the house and you can find them by lifting stuff. And I was like, you know what? I got bit by a black widow a couple years ago, like something like 10 years ago. And I was describing it to her and I was giving her this story. And then Adele was over there right beside me and she was like, Is that when we were living at such and such a house? And I was like, yeah, you remember it? She's like, oh yeah, I remember it. Happened nothing like what you just described. Here's exactly how it happened. So she described it and I was like, that is what happened.
But you weren't lying.
No, I wasn't lying.
Right.
I was being truthful. I was trying to tell my daughter a really cool story and that I thought happened.
Yeah.
None of it had happened.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, none of it.
Tell me what did happen, because now I need to know.
So what I told her was I was at my garden hose and I was watering the grass and I had these rose bushes and I was trying to lean in to turn the water on and off and I felt like I got bit in my back by a black widow. And I told her, I looked around and I saw it was in the rose bush. And then I came in and then I had all these symptoms, which I did. All that's true. I did have symptoms and I did lean up against something. It did poke me. I think it was the thorn bush.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did have some symptoms for about a week. Stiff muscles, stiff bones.
And you were symptomatic because you felt the prick, you looked down, your mind said you felt that, you saw that, this must have happened. So then it did all the things that would have happened had you actually been. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And I love that answer. I find it just shocking. This book has not disappointed yet. That just 2 days ago you stumbled upon this. When that happened, how old is your daughter right now?
She's almost 10.
Okay, so when that happened, how did you feel? Were you embarrassed? Were you humbled? Were you laughing it off? Like, because that happened
When
in front
Adele
of your...
brought it up?
Yeah, because good for your wife to be able to say, wait a second, that didn't happen. How do you I don't know, right the ship?
I have two answers. The old me would have got embarrassed and been upset that she would call me out and be like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. But the new me, I'm able to be like, well, because I don't take myself as serious as I used to. Perfect. I used to take myself very seriously. My new self, I'm able to be like, you're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, now that you bring it up, what you're saying is absolutely true. And I didn't even realize it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's awesome because I'm telling you, one of the things that I feel like is important in parenting is being truthful to your kids about who you are, what you've done. To raise them in a proper way, you need to be human. And I want to be that way for our daughter. So we share everything with our daughter about age appropriate, about the things that we gone through in our life and what we learned from them. And man, it's valuable.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a great answer too, by the way. Great answer. We have a lot more to discuss. We're going to have to almost get the next show on the books before you leave here this day. But I just got to say, this has been amazing. The pleasure is all mine. And I really hope that you got some enjoyment out of this and that maybe there's just a little bit of peace that came out of just talking to me in the microphone here.
I've had a lot of fun. Brother, I was telling you on the phone, I think yesterday, that you and Kristen have had an impact on me in my life. I look back at when I first met you guys, and I'm able to see that both of you guys are very serious about how you steward your physical bodies, what you eat, your health. I've seen also in how you choose relationships. You choose relationships that are life-giving, that are important to you. You choose, even in the excellence of how you choose to have your homes. You know, I've now been to 2 homes that you've had.
Right.
And you inspire me. Both of you inspire me in how you choose to show up. And so I want to acknowledge you for that. And I want to acknowledge you for what you're doing in your life and choosing to help other people, man. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your kind words. Appreciate it, Travis.
You're welcome.
Till next
Thank
time.
you, brother.
Okay.